91 feet long, 24 wheels, stripped for scrap. They called it the Centipede, the machine Baldwin Locomotive Works bet everything on. For 125 years, Baldwin built over 70,000 locomotives and dominated American railroading. Then they sank $12 million into this single design, convinced it would secure their future. Within a decade, Baldwin was gone. What drove the largest locomotive manufacturer in American history to stake its survival on a machine that could not stay running? Steam poured from the stacks at Eddystone, where Baldwin Locomotive Works stretched along the Delaware River like a city unto itself. For more than 100 years, this was the heart of American railroading, a place where iron and ambition shaped the nation's destiny. Baldwin's craftsmen, thousands strong, turned out locomotives at a pace no rival could match. Their ledgers recorded over 70,000 steam engines, each one tailored for a customer's needs, each one a testament to the company's command of steam and steel. Inside the plant, foundries roared, and overhead cranes swung massive boiler shells across the assembly bays. The workforce, including pattern makers, machinists, and boiler makers, operated as a well-drilled team, many having learned their trade from fathers and grandfathers on the same floor. Baldwin's integrated facility meant every step, from casting to final assembly, happened under one roof. The company's engines pulled trains across the Rockies, through the Pennsylvania mountains, and into distant ports, their names etched on the sides of engines as far away as Argentina and China. Baldwin was more than a factory. It was an institution, woven into the fabric of American industry. Its output powered wars, opened frontiers, and connected cities. In the age of steam, Baldwin's dominance seemed unshakable, a monument to the belief that mastery of heavy industry could secure a company's future no matter how the world might change. Across the country, the rules of railroading were being rewritten almost overnight. Diesels, once a curiosity, became the industry's new workhorses. In 1945, diesels made up just 4% of new locomotive sales. By 1950, that number had soared to 68%. The reasons were as stark as they were simple. Diesels could run longer between overhauls, needed smaller crews, and were ready to go at the turn of a key. Railroads, locked in fierce competition and squeezed by post-war costs, saw a way to slash expenses and boost efficiency. Internal studies showed diesels could be available for service up to 95% of the time, compared to 70 or 80% for steam. With every month, more freight and passenger trains traded coal smoke for the hum of diesel engines. Trade journals reported record orders, and industry leaders warned that any company unable to deliver diesels quickly would be left behind. For Baldwin, the message was clear: adapt or risk being swept aside by a wave that was only gaining speed. Electromotive Division and Alco seized the diesel future with a speed and confidence Baldwin could not match. EMD's F-Unit series, introduced in the early 1940s, rolled off assembly lines in modular sets, each one a near clone of the last. Railroads could order dozens at a time, knowing every unit would fit their fleet, every part would swap easily, and every crew would recognize the controls. Alco followed with its own reliable road diesels, offering similar interchangeability and support. By 1950, EMD supplied more than 60% of new diesel locomotives sold in the United States. Their engines ran day and night, requiring little more than routine checks, and when something failed, spare parts were a phone call away. Maintenance shops praised the simplicity, standardized wiring, proven engines, and a design philosophy built around quick repairs. In contrast, Baldwin's approach, custom builds and heavy steam-era construction, looked increasingly outdated. Railroads, under pressure to cut costs and boost reliability, placed order after order with EMD and Alco. Baldwin watched as its century-long lead evaporated. The company's survival now depended on a bold answer: something that could leapfrog the competition and restore its reputation for power and innovation. On March 23, 1945, Baldwin's boardroom filled with the tension of a company standing at a crossroads. 10 directors cast their votes, all in favor, authorizing a $12 million outlay for a single project, a wager that could secure Baldwin's future or exhaust its reserves. The Centipede, officially designated DR-12-8-1500 was unlike anything the diesel era had seen. At over 91 feet long and weighing nearly 600,000 pounds, it stretched across the rails with a 2D plus D2 wheel arrangement, 24 wheels, 8 of them powered, and 2 massive diesel engines packed inside. The capital commitment represented nearly 1/10 of Baldwin's total assets, a sum that would cover new tooling, prototype builds, and a dedicated assembly line. Inside the engineering offices, technical drawings detailed a locomotive almost mythic in scale. The articulated frame split into 2 half-bodies, joined at the center, allowing the machine to pivot around curves while its 12 axles distributed weight across even the lightest rails. 2 1,500 horsepower Baldwin 608 SC engines, each turbocharged and mounted side by side, drove a bank of Westinghouse generators and 8 traction motors. The electrical wiring ran through thick metal conduits, a legacy of Baldwin's steam practice, and the undercarriage bristled with gearboxes, cooling loops, and auxiliary systems for passenger heating. The Centipede's presence was unmistakable. At over 91 feet 6 inches in length, it dwarfed the competition, its silhouette more battleship than locomotive. The promise was bold, a single machine capable of replacing 3 conventional road diesels, built to haul the heaviest trains at speeds up to 120 miles per hour. But beneath the surface, the board's unanimous vote masked a deep uncertainty. The company's future now rested on a machine whose scale and complexity had never been tested in the real world. Baldwin had put $12 million and its reputation on the line, betting that power and prestige could buy a second act in an industry that was already moving on. Baldwin's salesmen fanned out across the country with a message tailored for each railroad's ambitions. The Centipede wasn't just another locomotive, it was pitched as a revolution on wheels. For the Pennsylvania Railroad, the promise was prestige and raw power, a machine that could haul the Broadway Limited at speeds up to 120 miles per hour, replacing 3 conventional diesels with a single imposing unit. Brochures boasted of 3,000 horsepower, a ride as smooth as the famed GG1 electrics, and tractive effort that would flatten the Allegheny grades. Contracts offered a 3-year warranty and a standing guarantee on spare parts, a gesture meant to reassure even the most skeptical buyers. Seaboard Airlines executives were courted with visions of high-speed passenger trains slicing through the Southeast. Baldwin pledged a 4-year warranty, along with a dedicated team of factory-trained mechanics stationed in Florida. Sales literature described the Centipede as the dawn of a new era, an engine capable of running from New York to Miami without a hitch, handling light track with grace thanks to its articulated frame. In Mexico, Ferrocarriles Nacionales de Mexico received a different pitch, tropical durability, and the muscle to conquer mountain grades. Baldwin promised a robust cooling system, dynamic brakes for the steepest descents, and a local parts depot in Mexico City. The contract included a 4-year warranty and the assurance that the Centipede would make steam relics obsolete on the country's most demanding routes. Every promise was bold, every contract heavy with guarantees. But as the orders rolled in and the first units shipped, Baldwin's reputation and its future now depended on the Centipede delivering everything the salesman had sworn it could do. Ralph P. Johnson, Baldwin's chief engineer, believed the company could outmuscle its rivals with a machine that blended old-world strength and new-world ambition. His vision for the Centipede rested on two engines working in tandem, twin 1,500 horsepower units, each with its own generator, promising that if one failed, the other could limp the train home. This redundancy was meant as a safeguard, a direct answer to railroad executives wary of breakdowns, far from a service terminal. Johnson's memos described it as a locomotive that would keep moving when others stalled. To handle the Centipede's enormous weight, Johnson insisted on an articulated frame, two half-bodies joined at the center, each able to pivot through tight curves. This design spread 600,000 pounds across 12 axles, reducing stress on the rails and echoing the smooth ride of the Pennsylvania Railroad's GG1 electrics. Baldwin's engineers claimed that the result would be unmatched stability at speed, a diesel that glided like a Pullman car even on the roughest track. But beneath the promises, complexity crept in. The Centipede's electrical system ran through thick, metal conduits, a holdover from Baldwin's steam era. Each wire was routed by hand, with little standardization from one unit to the next. Maintenance crews found themselves tracing circuits through a maze of bespoke wiring, unable to swap parts as they could on EMD modular F units. Every extra safeguard and custom feature added weight, labor, and risk. Johnson's confidence in heavy engineering and redundancy produced a locomotive that was as intricate as it was imposing. A machine engineered to impress, but one that carried the seeds of its own trouble in every cable and coupling. Breakdowns began almost immediately, and the shop logs filled with stories that spread from crew room to boardroom. Pennsylvania Railroad's mechanics at Altoona described tracing electrical faults through a tangle of metal conduit, only to find bus bars pitted and blackened from arcing. A single coolant leak could sideline a Centipede for more than a week. That happened to Unit 5825 outside Fort Wayne. Its radiator loop was overwhelmed by heat, forcing an emergency stop and days of teardown. Seaboard airline crews in Florida faced traction motors that overheated and burned out, sometimes after just a few heavy runs. One unit, 4503, lost all propulsion on a grade near Ocala when a short in the high-voltage bus left the locomotive dead in the water. Repairs stretched on for days while spare parts had to be rushed from Eddystone. The problems ran deeper than any single incident. Mechanics found gearboxes with teeth already pitted after only a few months. Axle bearings, forced to carry the machine's massive weight, would overheat and seize, sometimes locking up a truck in the middle of a run. No two Centipedes were exactly alike, and every wiring harness seemed to follow its own path, so even routine fixes turned into hours of detective work. Crews joked that maintaining a Centipede meant learning a new machine every time one rolled into the shop. With every breakdown, confidence in Baldwin's flagship faded, and the gap between bold promise and daily reality only grew wider. Accountants at the Pennsylvania Railroad and Seaboard Airline began compiling monthly availability reports soon after the Centipedes entered service. The numbers told a story sharper than any crew complaint or engineering memo. Where EMD's F units were out of service just 3 to 4% of the time, Centipedes averaged between 11 and 13% downtime, sometimes even higher during peak failures. That meant for every 100 hours scheduled, a Centipede spent nearly 2 weeks in the shop, while an F unit lost only 3 or 4 days. In the language of railroad finance, these gaps were catastrophic. On the Pennsylvania Railroad, each Centipede's extra downtime translated into about $260,000 in lost revenue and added costs every year. That figure covered not just idle engines, but also overtime for crews, missed connections, and the expense of keeping backup power on standby. For the Seaboard Airline and Mexico's national railways, the penalties ran nearly as high. Availability tables circulated between railroad headquarters and Baldwin's sales office, each one a quiet indictment. The company's flagship was not just unreliable, It was bleeding money at a pace that no warranty or goodwill gesture could cover. EMD's F units, with their standardized parts and predictable service record, became the benchmark that every railroad used to measure Baldwin's failings. The verdict from the ledgers was unambiguous. The Centipede's complexity and chronic downtime had turned Baldwin's greatest gamble into a quantifiable disaster. Procurement officers at the major railroads began shifting their attention and their budgets toward EMD. The numbers told the story with brutal clarity. The Pennsylvania Railroad, once Baldwin's anchor customer, placed an order for 30 EMD GP9 locomotives in 1955, bypassing any further Centipede purchases. Seaboard Airline followed, signing a $12 million contract for 40 F-7s. In Mexico, Ferrocarriles Nacionales de Mexico committed to 20 GP7 locomotives, citing the need for a proven, maintainable platform. Internal memos at EMD captured the mood. Baldwin's Centipede is now a cautionary example: overbuilt, unreliable, and costly to maintain. Our F units continue to win orders because they are standardized, easier to service, and have proven track records. The railroad's procurement records reflected a clear verdict. Where Baldwin's custom builds had once been a selling point, now they were a liability. The bulk orders went to EMD, and with each contract, Baldwin's commercial standing slipped further. The Centipede's failures were not just technical, they were commercial, and every lost order was a blow from which the company would not recover. By 1952, the Centipede's last appearance on a flagship train had come and gone. Timetables that once listed Baldwin's giants at the head of the Broadway Limited and the Silver Meteor now showed EMDF units in their place. Service rosters told the story in cold type. The Centipedes were reassigned to helper duty on the Allegheny grades, their gearing swapped for low-speed tractive effort, their days of high-speed runs over. On the Seaboard Airline, the same units that had once led passenger trains to Miami now shunted freight through the sweltering yards of Hamlet and Savannah. Crews who had once taken pride in running Baldwin's showpieces now found themselves assigned to yard switching at East Juniata, the locomotives crawling back and forth with strings of empty hoppers. The demotion was unmistakable. Where the Centipede had once stood for power and prestige, it now labored out of sight, its reputation reduced to a line on a work order. For the men who ran and maintained them, the sense of loss was personal, a daily reminder that the company's century-old promise of excellence had been broken by its most ambitious gamble. Warranty claims against the Centipede piled up faster than Baldwin's accountants could process them. Between 1953 and 1956, the company paid out an estimated $2.5 million to cover engine failures, electrical repairs, and parts shipments for just 54 locomotives, a staggering sum in an industry built on thin margins. Each new claim meant another hit to Baldwin's already strained cash flow. The specialized tooling and assembly lines, created at immense cost for Centipede production, now sat idle or were scrapped at a loss. Internal memos from the finance office showed the break-even point had slipped far out of reach. Instead of generating profit, the flagship diesel drained resources from every corner of the business. By early 1956, the board had little choice. Orders had dried up, warranty expenses eclipsed new sales, and creditors pressed for answers. The decision came down in stark language: halt all locomotive production, liquidate remaining diesel assets, and close the Eddystone plant. After 125 years, Baldwin's reign as America's locomotive builder ended not with a new triumph, but with a final, costly surrender. The Centipede, once a symbol of industrial ambition, had become the engine that brought the company to a standstill. Industrial giants rarely die from rivals alone. They collapse when ambition blinds them to change. Today, legacy brands in every sector face the same trap: prestige over performance, spectacle over substance. The Centipede's failure isn't just history, it's a warning. One disastrous bet can erase generations of trust. In every boardroom, that lesson still echoes. What do you think? Are modern industries listening or repeating Baldwin's mistake?